Hi, welcome to the ESLG 481 one credit practicum. If you're taking this course for the second time or the third time, so you're taking the 2-credit version or the 3-credit version, this is not the welcome that you need to watch. You need to watch the one that's in your module. So I'll assume that anyone listening is taking this course for the first time and they're taking it for 1 credit. And of course that 1 credit translates to 10 hours in the field. And so you will be placed in a language teaching, language learning situation for a minimum of 10 hours over the quarter. And I highly suggest that you, in your scheduling, that you build in a little wiggle room. In other words, you build in a few more hours than 10, because in my experience, things happen. So you might get sick, the teacher might get sick and class is canceled, or the teacher gets sick, class isn't canceled, but it's a substitute. The substitute doesn't want you there. There might be a test that you're asked not to attend that day because it might make the students even more nervous. And so build in a little extra time, count on, say, 12 hours, and then you'll safely get your 10. But what I really wanted to talk about with you, because my assumption is that you might have had experiences with English language learners before, but this is your first real professional experience. One thing I wanted to talk with you about is what to expect. So most of you will be placed in an Asia University America program classroom. And what you can expect is that part of the time you will simply be a silent observer. That means you'll be sitting with the other students somewhere in the classroom, and they actually encourage you to not sit at the back of the classroom, but rather to sit with the students. So you're kind of dispersed throughout the student population. And you'll simply be kind of a silent observer. Now, a couple of things about this. The first, you need to be a model student. Your behavior needs to be model behavior. Don't open your phone. Don't have your phone out. Never make a phone call unless the teacher specifically asks you to check on something. Don't be talking to someone around you, even if it's somewhat related to the course content. Make sure that you're paying attention. Again, you're modeling excellent, engaged behavior for the other students. So also, I want you to think about when you are observing, I want you to not see what's going on, not watch the teacher's choices as a student. I want you to be thinking like a teacher. For every choice that the instructor makes, a question the teacher throws out at the beginning. When the student says count off by 2s, if she or he says take out your homework and I want you to go to question number 10. Be thinking, why question number 10? Why counting off? Why that question? Be thinking like a teacher. And in fact, it might be helpful to imagine that the teacher is going to turn the class over to you, and how would you pick up on the choices that the teacher is making and continue those. So be thinking like a teacher, not like a student, which is probably the way you've been thinking throughout most of your career in classes. One of the reasons that I place most of the 1 credit practicum students with AUAP is because the teachers are so experienced and so good at what they do. So you're truly seeing a model. Absorb it, take it all in, be paying attention. Try to walk away with everything you can. Even if you don't understand why a teacher made certain choices, just take those in, because I promise you there will be at some point in your teaching career where you want to take that back out and you want to use that yourself. So take in that great modeling and really enjoy it. So part of the time you'll simply be a silent observer, but the rest of the time you'll actually be doing something. Sometimes you'll be acting as a class assistant, and that can look like you're sitting in your seat and the teacher is explaining something, and she says, Gina, how would you answer this question? Or, Gina, why don't you try question number 3? So essentially you're modeling for the other students. Sometimes you will be asked to go to the front of the classroom and maybe model a dialogue with the instructor, either that's written out, it's a script, or just kind of by the seat of your pants, what would you say in this situation? So there's no wrong answer, just do your best, and remember that your English is far ahead of the students in the class, so anything that you do is going to assist them. Sometimes you will be a classroom assistant because the instructor will assign students to work on something either individually or in pairs or in small groups, and she will be or he will be up and moving around the classroom, checking on students' work, seeing if there are any questions, making sure students are on task, and she or he will ask you to do the same. So that's another role that you might take. Sometimes you'll be a discussion partner. So one of the reasons that I encourage you to sit down next to another student is because that student might very well end up being the student that you work with as a discussion partner. So what that might look like is the instructor on the overhead pulls up 5 questions to talk about that relate to the content today, and you and your partner would talk through them. One of the challenges that you will find almost immediately is how to support students with getting to the right answer without giving them the right answer. And that is something that you'll be working on your whole career. But this will probably start that pathway. Another role that you might take in the AUAP classroom as a small group leader. So the same as with a partner, but you might be working with 3 other students or 2 other students or 4 other students. And you might actually be asked to lead it. And so maybe you're participating in the discussion, but you're also guiding it, you're moving it along, you're making sure students are following the timeline that's required by the instructor. And finally, one thing that may or may not happen for you this quarter, as the instructor gets to know you and as the instructor begins to kind of trust in your abilities, you may be asked to lead an activity. And what this might look like is, if you are in an AUAP classroom on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you on Tuesday might be told that on Thursday they're going to begin a new unit, and would you like to introduce it? Most students, when asked this, say no. And I really want to encourage you to give the right answer, which is yes. And your personality might be like mine. I tend to misjudge what I'm capable of. I tend to think I'm capable of less than I am, and you might be the same. But the teachers have been around the block a lot of times. They work with a lot of developing teachers. If they believe that you can handle introducing something, you can. So trust them, say yes, and then feel free to ask me for assistance. But do prepare, and I'll be glad to support you. It's just one of those steps that's as scary as all get out, to use an idiom, all get out. The first couple of times you take it, but you simply have to. It's like really taking the training wheels off a bicycle the first few times that you ride. It's scary, definitely. It's scary for everybody, but you just got to do it. It's part of the process. So say yes if you are lucky enough to be asked. Some of you might be non-native speakers yourself, and so you know what it is to learn another language. Some of you might have spent, you're native or native-like speakers of English, and you have spent a lot of time with non-native speakers, and so you might be quite comfortable. So for some of the others, you might never have had a sustained conversation with a non-native speaker before. So this advice is especially for you. So one thing that naives, that's what they're called in our field, when our ear is not experienced in hearing a variety of accents, and we ourselves are not experienced in changing our language a little bit so that we meet the needs of non-native speakers, one thing that we are often tempted to do is to raise our voice. And I'm sure none of you would do it, but I just need to make sure that you don't make that mistake inadvertently. Raising your voice will not in any way make your language more clear. So you don't want to do that. You do want to slow down your language a little bit. Not ridiculously so. You don't need to talk like this, but talking like this can really help. So one thing you might want to do when you get placed is find out how advanced the students are. There's advanced, there's intermediate, there's beginners. The closer they are to beginners, the more you need to slow down your speech. High intermediate, technically you don't need to anymore. You may wish to, but you don't actually need to. So that's something to think about. Another thing to think about, even those of you who are quite experienced, is try to avoid and remove idioms as much as possible. So what are idioms? Idioms are groups of words that when you parse each word individually and then you add the meanings together, the meaning doesn't mean that. And so what I suggest that you do with your language is begin to notice them. Notice when you're using these little chunks of language that don't add up to the actual meaning. Things like getting up. Instead say wake up or get out of bed. Those words can be parsed individually and they have basically the same meaning, but getting up is an idiom. Another one, saying things like raining like crazy. Okay, I think all native-like speakers know exactly what you mean by that, but it's a thick idiom that you need to avoid whenever possible. So saying something like raining a lot. And I think for those of you who are true beginners at working with English language learners, about the best you can do is to notice on the fly when you're using an idiom and self-correct. If you say, oh yeah, I got up this morning at, go back and say, I woke up at, I got out of my bed, that sort of thing. So kind of fix it on the fly as you can, but start to notice. And once you start to notice idioms, there's no turning back. You'll notice them when you're speaking. Other things I wanted to mention, it's okay to ask someone to repeat themselves. That's one thing that I really struggled with when I was beginning to work with language learners. I felt that it was impolite. But a language learning classroom is a slightly different politeness context than anywhere else. There will be, by definition, miscommunication that occurs. And for those of you who've already taken second language acquisition, you know about negotiation of meaning. And so you know that when communication breaks down, that's actually a wonderful thing because it's giving the language learner feedback on what the way they're producing English is not working. So be polite, be kind, try to ask in different ways, try to break down what they're saying in case repeating it isn't making a difference in your understanding, but it is okay to ask multiple times. And when you are expressing yourself, be watching faces to have a sense on whether or not students understand. And try to support your language. Act things out. Draw it on paper. Do anything you can, including repeating some key words. Pointing at things. If you're talking about you dropped your pen, actually pointing at your pen. So support your language. And those of you who've taken second language acquisition, you'd recognize I'm talking about contextualizing language from Jim Cummins' idea of Bix and Kelp. So another thing that most people struggle with when they're first in a language teaching classroom is they struggle with how friendly to be. If you are not friendly and open and approachable, students will not want to produce English with you. And if they don't want to produce English with you, it's getting in the way of interaction. So yes, it's important to be open and friendly and as warm as your personality and your teaching repertoire will allow. On the other hand, these are not your friends. One of the lines that you end up walking when you're an instructor is being friendly with students but not friends with students. So you'll have to figure that kind of out on your own and be as warm as you can without treating one student differently than another, and without giving up the power that you have as a classroom assistant. So the final thing that I want to say for you in your 1 credit practicum as you're getting started is I want to say this is your job this quarter. You might also be working at a department store and the bookstore, and you might also be waiting tables at night, so you've got all these other things. You might also be a mom or a dad, all these other jobs. This is your job too this quarter. And adult life is full of having to make really difficult choices, and in which something has to lose. And here's what I want you to do. Because this is your first official step in your career, your TESOL career, I want you to put this practicum first, or as high on your list of priorities as is possible. So if you have a big test coming up in one of your classes and you're really worried about it, and you are tempted to contact your teacher, the teacher you're working with, and cancel your assistance for that day so you can study a little extra, don't. Put this first. I guarantee you that this practicum will have more impact on your long-term career than the other course that you're worried about. Because the instructor that you're working with is an expert. They are known in our community. They have a lot of power. They are looked up to by many people in our profession, in our community. So their word about your perseverance and your development, your professionality, all of those things will really have great sway. And you need them to be talking about you as a developing professional, not someone who wants to sleep in an extra 10 minutes and so you show up 10 minutes late. So be on time. Treat this as your first priority. Be on time, be there. Certainly people get the flu, especially this year, and if that's the case, you need to contact the instructor beforehand and let them know, because they're professionals and they'll be counting on you to be there, and they will have designed some activities specifically for your assistance, whether that's being a partner with a student who's really struggling, or in helping them kind of act out a dialogue that the students are going to carry out on their own. So make sure to put this at the top of your priority and treat it as your job. Okay, good luck. You know that your next step is to kind of work out the final details of where you will be placed. I've sent an announcement to that effect. Please contact me if you have any questions or you need some assistance with your placement. Okay, good luck.